Welcome back to the State of the Arc podcast. My name is Mike.
My name is Kason.
We're on episode 3 now of Final Fantasy X. I had initially planned this out as 1. It's been turned into 3. It maybe turned into 4.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
I
We'll
hope
see.
not. We'll see. Go
So
ahead.
we talked about in the last episode how we didn't know exactly who the other person was.
The other ghostly.
Yeah, the other ghost kind of. As Titus goes and sees more or less his former self, right before that cutscene, you can technically see another person.
Yeah.
And it looks like that other person is Jecht, at least from what we've been able to tell.
I'm feeling
So
more confident about that now.
I think so too. It looked like a dress to me, but if you look at Jecht from his right side, he has that long orange
Yes.
like cloth hanging
Right.
down.
Let me just pull up.
So to me, it looked like a dress of sorts, so I thought it might have been his mother. But it actually looks a lot like Jecht with a red head.
Yeah, so he's got this
Yeah,
thing, right?
Yep. So,
Yeah.
anyways, it's probably Jecht standing with us, but then once we actually approach, we only see.
Yeah, it's like he
Our childhood
disappears.
self.
So like on my playthrough, the
Yeah.
footage I was originally looking at, I approached it kind of from a different angle. So by the time the camera pivots around from where I approached, it's like the ghost of Jecht has disappeared.
Oh,
So
really?
that's why I thought, oh, it's just the kid Titus there.
That's interesting.
Then when you showed me all that and I looked at it, and I'll have pinned a comment on the last episode for
Yeah.
this, of the video footage I was looking at where I got a really clear view of it, where he approached it from like more of like this angle instead of this angle. So the camera was
Yeah.
already like looking
and then you could see.
there and you could see him much more clearly. It really looks like Jecht
Yeah.
is that ghostly image. And it would make sense
I agree.
anyways,
Right.
if it is.
And as far as the voice saying "Hey" goes, I think that's probably.
It's
Jecht,
probably
too, but-
Jecht as well. Yes.
All right.
Anyways,
And then he says something. He's got like a little monologue after that point where he says, you know, I feel like
he doesn't want to be alone.
I was
anymore.
alone and wanted
Yeah.
somebody to be with me and all of that stuff. And then he kind of just passes out.
Yeah.
And then we wake up in the middle of who
like
freaking
some
knows where.
ruins
Yeah.
out like in the water. This is something I think we're going to touch on today, is the seeming ability to either breathe underwater or hold your breath for a very, very long time.
Very long
'Cause
time.
this- This is going to happen twice really early, where Titus washes up ashore and was like face down in
Face
the water
down.
for a
Yeah,
long time.
Yes.
So we're not going to talk about it just yet, but at some point in this episode, we will try to address that a little bit.
'Kay.
Because there is an NPC who offers an explanation, and there's a further explanation that I won't get into the super details on now because I want to wait till later.
Okay.
But we will touch on it. The point is he can hold his breath for a very long time.
An extremely long time.
A very long time. Titus
Yeah.
and all blitzball players really
Yes.
are able to do this.
It's like a training thing. They also
Yes.
can swim faster than a shark, basically.
Yeah, they can swim really
like they
fast.
are extremely fast. So they're just really good at what they do.
Yeah.
The music right here, as you kind of come to and you're in this strange new world, and there's sort of like a chant, like Gregorian chant kind of going along, and that's the music that you're hearing. It's this like, you know, choir type thing, but it's really cool.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool. It's got a very medieval sound, a pretty Western sound, although I think they're technically saying Japanese words, or just some made up words. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's really cool. I really like the music, and it's just a ruined world that's been flooded.
Yeah, and so he swims kind of into this temple structure. He's
Yes.
like crossing a bridge, but he falls through there back into some water again, gets attacked by some
Yeah, he's
monsters.
super upset. He makes a fire,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah, he gets away from that monster. That's the one where he's about to eat him, and he just like flies through him. And then that's when he says, I made it out of the frying pan and into the freezer. I thought I was going to die in this place. So it's like really cold
Yes, it was
in
cold.
this place.
And he doesn't say that in Japanese, though. I actually took note of this in particular.
Oh,
in the
because there's
Japanese.
probably a different...
No, it's not even an idiom. It's a completely different text, which is why, because there will often be differences here. I'm not going to note all of them.
Yeah.
This one's interesting though, and you know, I'll probably just read it and then we'll just move on. But instead of saying out of the frying pan and into the freezer in Japanese, he says things got worse and worse. It was a place that made me feel like I had no hopes or dreams.
That second part.
Yes, it's interesting. It's cool. But it's not out of the frying pan into the freezer.
No.
In fact, he doesn't even say anything that close to that. He doesn't reference the fact that it's cold until the next scene where he's like, samui desu, samui. And then it's like, hey, he's cold.
I feel like out of the frying pan in the freezer is like a stretch to say it got worse and worse.
Yes,
right?
yes.
It at least like is loosely the same idea. But the second part, I thought I was going to die in this place versus what that says.
Versus it made me feel like I had no hopes or dreams.
That's very
specifically
different.
Hopes or dreams.
And I also feel like that one is a lot better.
Much better, much better. That's why I took note of it. I listened to it and I read the subtitle and I was like, that's not it. That's not it. The Japanese was way better.
Wow.
Way better.
Wow, that's a huge change.
Yeah, it's a huge change.
I really wonder why they did that.
And I wrote here, it seems like this place was a temple that was destroyed and is now flooded. It's just got all the architecture and stuff that seems like it was a temple.
Yep.
But also there's some like scratch writings in the ground, like right around the campfire where we are. Now, I got this from, I believe, Final Fantasy Union. Is that the
the YouTube channel? Yeah.
They have a little video called 7 Things That You Don't Know
Missed
About. Yes, that you missed. Yeah. One of them was the translation of what those writings mean, and I thought it was pretty cool. I figured I'd bring it up now. It's just a couple of words. Some of them mean something, some of them don't. But the words are, and it's all written in the Spira script, right?
Oh, right.
So it says fire, balcony, jizko, guado, and salam. Those are the words that are written on the ground, along with just a bunch of tally marks, just all around where Tidus is at. And there is meaning to that. We'll probably come back to this way later. Way later. If I can even remember.
Interesting that the word guado is there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And some other
Crazy. All right.
other words too.
So he collects some tinder and flint so he can start a fire.
Who knows where he got that from though? Because
just
water and stone. As far as I can tell.
Yeah. Anyway, there's some dried reeds.
That's
some
right. The
flower beds
reeds.
that he picks
would
up.
make sense. That would make sense.
And then some flint in like a cabinet in one of the rooms. But
That's right.
he strikes it, starts a fire, and he has a little dream, which is kind of like a flashback. And this is the first of many of these throughout the game. I think we see at least 2 more of these just in this part we played. But in this dream, Auron is, it's probably a memory, not a dream.
Sometimes it's a dream, sometimes it's a memory. But
Yeah.
they do a similar effect on all of them.
Yeah, so Auron is with Tidus, I guess, at his house, and sort of blaming him for this loss in Blitzball that happened. It's like, you let your team down or made a bad call or whatever.
Yeah.
He's like, you're going to rail on me for that? And then Auron says, it's been 10 years. I thought you'd be crying. 10 years since the disappearance of Jack.
The Jack
is what he's referring to.
Jack.
And so then Tidus is like, who, me? And then the little purple hooded boy comes in. You cried.
Yeah.
So that's the end of that little sequence. And then he wakes up and it's like the fire is dying. He's like, oh, no, don't go out.
Yep.
I'll find some more wood. I don't know where he's going to find wood because he didn't find wood in the first place. He found tinder.
Yeah.
But anyways, this is where he gets attacked by a monster.
Yeah, that crazy monster. The monster design is really cool in this game.
Yeah. Kind of a lizardy sort of.
Yeah, it's like crawling on the walls and jumps out at you. But that thing attacks and it's rough. But that's when Rikku shows up
and the Albed
and kills him for us. Now Riku's name is pronounced Ryukku. Ryukku. Yeah. So her name's Ryukku, and I don't fault them at all for calling them Rikku, calling her Rikku. But yeah, Ryukku would be what she's called throughout the game in Japanese. But she shows up with these other people. They're all masked. They have like goggles and stuff. You can't really tell.
He thinks they've come in to save him, so he's thanking them for that. and then they start like yelling at him and like
and they point their
pointing
guns,
their
at him, and they don't speak his language.
No.
So he's just like really confused.
In this game, the Albed language is slowly learned or deciphered by Tidus by acquiring items in the world called Albed primers.
Primers, yeah.
So if you collect them all,
book or something,
if you collect them all, then the subtitles for all the Albed stuff in the game, whether it's spoken or whether you're reading runes or something like that, he'll be able to translate it, and you'll be able to know what those things say.
Yeah.
Which essentially incentivizes a second playthrough, like a New Game Plus playthrough, because you'll be able to keep your Albed primers and then learn what they say.
Nice.
Right, and so the language is interesting because it's not really like another language as much as it is like an encoded thing. Because
every D means this letter, every A is this, and it's a pretty easy cipher.
Substituting, like this symbol is this letter in English, and they have the same syntax, the same vocabulary, the same everything.
I wanted to ask about the voice acting in English. Is what they enunciate with their mouths correspond to the subtitle text?
I believe it does.
Okay.
But I don't know that for sure, because my assumption was
the Japanese is completely
they
different.
have sounds that are different for their alphabet, but that alphabet still corresponds with the English alphabet.
Sure.
But it's like, let's say like the letter D, right, has their symbol for that in the written encryption, but they have a different sound for their letter.
Right, okay.
That's the way I thought it worked.
That's a good way of imagining it. That makes sense.
So anyways, Tidus does not understand this. And I really liked this too, because 1,000-year time skip, as we're about to find out, is what happened, right?
Yeah.
The languages would be very different. And so he wouldn't be able to understand anyone.
Yes.
And so I thought this was going somewhere really cool the first time I played it. And then they just can speak to him anyways.
Now, but at the same time, I don't necessarily mind that they did it. Yeah. But it's weird that they hinted that they were going to be really particular about this and actually take seriously how the language would have changed.
Yes.
And then they didn't. So if they didn't give us that hint that that's what they might be doing, I wouldn't have cared.
Yeah,
right?
I wouldn't
but
have
because they gave us the hint that, oh, by the way, language is so different, never mind, it's the same, it's just those are different people.
Yes.
Like, because they did that, I felt a little shortchanged by them.
Yeah, so it's not like I have this expectation, they should have done this for this game.
Yeah, I don't even know if it would have been a good idea.
I don't know if it would have worked for this game.
I don't know.
But it did make me think it would be cool if there was a game where there was a 1,000-year time skip, and for the whole game, you're collecting primers, and as you do that, you start to slowly be able to interpret the language.
That would be cool.
And so, like, it's almost like, I don't know what you'd call it, the type of story where you're like a fish out of water, right? But you have to actually, not you the player, but the character has to learn the language in order to communicate. And maybe you could put it into primers, or like as he or she sort of like gets these primers or learns or studies the language or whatever, like it'll start, maybe like they could start saying English words like amid the language, so he could start like picking out words or have some way of representing that where...
That would be cool.
That would be
awesome.
I think that'd be a pretty cool thing to try.
Albeit maybe frustrating, and certainly not for the 14-year-old demographic.
Maybe not.
You know, that most games are made for.
Maybe not. Yeah. But I don't know. I just had that idea while I was playing. I was like, that'd be really cool. I'd be into a game that tried that out.
That'd be awesome.
But during that sequence, there's a couple of really cool shots where they have a pretty wide-angle lens, but they're really close on Tidus's face looking over his shoulder. So like Tidus takes up maybe like the right third of the screen.
Oh, yeah.
But the camera's like right in his face.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a wide angle, so it's an uncomfortable sort of camera angle they've chosen that like emphasizes what he's feeling, not being able to understand what they're saying, have guns pointed at him, and have no idea what's going on. And he's totally off balance here. And so like this camera is pointed at the Albed as he's talking, but Tidus's face with a wide angle lens close to the camera, it warps your face, right? So he looks like really uncomfortable. And so I thought that there's some nice choices for camera angles there.
Absolutely.
I really like that. Okay, so then he wakes up on the ship.
Yeah.
There's some more Albed here. None of this is like, I don't even want to say spoilery, because even the stuff we talked about there, it's not enough to really spoil the game.
No.
It's just like if you don't know what they're talking about, you won't really understand it anyways. But here, it's just really simple stuff. So sit, captive. And he says, hey, that hurts. And he says, no moving here. Whoa, okay, says Titus. And then they say, search him. And then he tries, the Albed leader, or I don't know if he's their leader, but at least leading these people. I think Rikku probably is, but anyways, I think this character is Brother, if I'm not mistaken. That's the name of the character. I think he's the one who's doing this. But he starts doing all these like gestures to try to communicate to him.
It's funny too.
It's really funny. He's trying to
to
tell
do
him,
like
you're
a
going to
swim,
dive,
yeah.
you're going to swim down there, and you're going to like excavate for us, right? But he's like trying to use gestures to communicate it.
Yeah, it's funny.
And so Titus is just like, right, whatever. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And Brother says, do you not speak? He tries some more hand gestures. And then I thought that was a really weird thing to say, though, because he literally spoke to you. He said, "Right, whatever," and then he says, "Do you not speak?"
Oh,
and then he goes,
yeah.
and he says, "I don't understand," or I said, "I don't understand." So he's obviously speaking. He's just speaking a different language.
But that may be a culture thing where to speak means to speak the language or something like that.
But also, it's the same language that everyone else in the world speaks.
You're right. And
His sister speaks this language.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rikku speaks this language. So anyways, whatever. He says insolence, and then Rikku says wait, and she starts speaking in English at this point.
Yes.
He said you can stay if you make yourself useful. And you understand me? So Titus is like, whoa. They smack him. He's like, all right, I'll work. So what she says then is, we found some ancient ruins right beneath us. It's not active now, but there should be still be some power left. We're going to go down there and activate it, and then we should be able to salvage the big prize. So the Albed are going around salvaging ancient ruins, technology, that sort of thing. And so they've found something here at this spot in the ocean. They want to swim down there and activate it, they're saying, and check it out. So she and Titus swim way down there.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, how is her voice acting in English?
This is the type of character typically in anime that you expect to be imitating that like overly high-pitched and cutesy Japanese.
In Japanese, that's exactly
in
what
English, she doesn't go overboard with it, which I like.
That's good.
Yeah.
She sounds like she's about 10 years old
Yeah,
in the Japanese.
yeah.
It's, I don't know. It's a little grating sometimes.
Well, particularly with some of the shot selection they choose for their conversation after this, but
yeah,
we'll talk about that in a second. So let's touch on, because you swim down here and you're underwater again for like 20 minutes or something like that. So let's touch on this real quick, the holding the breath thing, because there's, like, I think a lot of people would probably dismiss this as like, just suspend your disbelief. It's a fantasy game, whatever.
Sure.
Like they just whatever. Don't think too hard about it. But they actually did provide some in-universe explanation for this, and it's even enforced in like the battle system, right? Because you'll notice as you play the game, there are only 3 characters who can actually fight underwater. So Titus, Wakka, and Rikku are the only party members who participate in underwater battles. None of the other characters do. So Titus and Wakka are blitzball players.
Yes.
And Rikku does these excavations all the time.
Right.
She's probably down, holding her breath underwater for long periods, doing these excavations with the Albed. So that's kind of interesting. So part of it is training, obviously. The other part of it has to do with something called fireflies, which we will learn a lot more about later. I'm not going to go into detail what those are now. But we have seen them kind of floating around in the air, like in the beginning scene.
The fairy-looking things that are just kind of chilling.
So fireflies apparently also sort of permeate the water of Spira, and that has some effect on their ability to hold their breath as long as they do. So it's a combination of fireflies and this intense
Like
training and practice that they do. Because normal people in Spira who have not done that training cannot hold their breath like this.
Okay.
So, it's just blitzball players / Albed who dive underwater all the time.
Yeah.
But anyways, kind of interesting because when you get to Besaid a little bit later, like in the next scene after this, one of the blitzball players, they're on the beach. You go talk to him and he says, you being a blitzball player is probably what saved you out there. Because he washes ashore again with his face down in the water.
Yes, later.
So he's basically saying that his training as a blitzball player is what basically kept him from drowning. He says the best players, they can hold their breath like forever. So anyways, they do, this is not just the kind of thing where they didn't think this through at all. They just say, don't think about it. Yeah. There are like explanations in the universe for how they do it.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool.
Also, I wanted to bring this up, and I just remembered it, and then I forgot to look it up first. I was going to talk about David Blaine.
Yeah, 20 minutes, almost 20 minutes,
where he held his breath for a super long time.
Yeah, he saturated his blood with oxygen.
Yes.
And he went down, and it was somewhere close to 20 minutes, I think.
But isn't there also something in the water that he is submerging himself in that makes that possible? That's what I wanted to look up.
I don't know, but that might be part of his magic trick that he doesn't want anyone to know about.
Because that would be like almost...
Well, there is such a thing as breathable liquid oxygen. There is something like that does exist in the world. I've seen that.
I think that's... Because I think he tried, in this TED Talk, he kind of goes over the fact that he tried in normal water and never made it above like 9-ish minutes or something like that, right? It's not exactly what I was thinking it was, but it is still really interesting.
It's more of a technique than a chemical.
We'll have to put a link somewhere in the description or as part of the pinned comment or something so that people can watch this TED Talk from David Blaine, because it's really interesting about how he adapted his body to hold his breath for a really, really long time.
For an extremely long time. Although one of the methods is don't move your muscles.
Yes.
That's definitely not
what
what's
they're
going
doing
on
in the game when they're playing blitzball. But the idea is it's not like completely out of the realm of like possibility that you can hold your breath for a really, really long time. And then when they explain it away with a magical element being infused in the water.
That's just the little extra push needed to be like, okay, we're good.
Yeah. So basically that's what's going on there. There's actually in-world explanation for that. Okay. So you swim. Go ahead.
Once we get into the place, though, it's the funniest thing ever. We get into this, place that they're trying to extract some resources from, right? But it's a technological-looking thing, right? So we wash up on this this broken temple, and it's like, where are we? Are we like way in the past or something? Like, what's going on? Because everything looks just Stone Age, right? And then you go down to this place, and it's all metal with electricity and computers. But there's like a touch screen, and in order to get in, you have to like do something on the touch screen. I don't know, because all you see is Titus just like hitting it, and then the door opens, and it's like
he just beats on things.
He just like smacks it until it opens. I thought that was hilarious.
And so they go in there and activate it. There's some spotlights that turn on. So then Titus is like trying to walk in with them, like, oh, I'm part of you guys now. They're like, get back
they shut the door and push
get out of here. Like, you don't get to come in, right?
Oh, I thought that was great.
He's like, hey, I helped, didn't I? But then he's all hungry, so Rikku brings out some food. And I really like this. He's eating too fast, and so like it's like painful. I actually do this all the time. Like,
me too.
A nearly daily basis, basically.
I choke on water. Probably every other day I choke on water. I feel like there's, have you ever heard of something called heart murmurs, right? Where the blood's going through, but the valve closes either too early or too late. And it just kind of like causes a little bit of friction as the valve closes. I feel like there's something like that with my throat, where I'm like, my mind is like, hey, I'm ready to swallow, or I'm ready to breathe now, but it's like not quite ready yet, and then I end up breathing in water, and it happens often enough to where I'm like, I'm not learning, like something else is wrong. Like there's a reflex thing that's happening here. It's not just like my mind, because I could fix this easily.
Yeah.
But yeah, Landon does this too. Landon chokes on water like all the time.
Yeah.
It might be a genetic thing. I don't know.
That's interesting. Like, what happens with me is I'm just eating and swallowing so much food so quickly that it just gets lodged, like, halfway down the esophagus, kind of like right in here.
Oh, I hate that. That's where it hurts.
Really painful.
That's where it hurts.
And then you have to drink water to like push it through.
That
Yes.
For me, it's like if I'm eating like peanut butter. That's when that for sure happens.
Yes.
Something sticky and thick, you know.
Yes.
But yeah, geez.
So that's what he does here.
He does. It reminded me a little bit of Final Fantasy VIII, and I can't remember his name.
Oh, Zell.
Zell
eating the hot dogs.
Zell's just chowing down on hot dogs. He's just like, just
exactly.
choking. It's like, I felt like it was a little bit of a callback to that. Because
Yeah.
this same team made that game, right?
Yeah.
So he's eating with his hands, which I just loved it, you know. And then he's just like, choking and choking. But what's funny is that he was so hungry, he's eating with his hands, he chokes, but then he doesn't keep eating after he chokes. But I forgive that as well, because it's like we don't want to just sit here and watch him eat a realistic full
like
meal,
the
how
whole
long
meal.
it would really take.
Right.
It's like, hey, it's implied he finished the meal, we're good, you know. We don't need to worry
He's
about
satisfied now.
that. But I did think about that.
So, he gets up, she says something again in English, and he's like, you really do understand me.
yeah,
Yay, awesome. He's like laughing,
hallelujah.
like super stoked that someone can actually speak to him. So their conversation here, I didn't take down like too many like direct quotes, but there's a couple of funny parts. Like she says "we," which is O-U-I.
Oui.
The al bed.
French.
It's
French,
also the
yes.
French, but
Yeah,
an
yeah.
al bed O-U-I, we, means you, and so she's
And it's even pronounced we, because he says we.
Yeah, it slips as she's talking. She slips the al bed word instead of the English word in, which happens with bilingual people, right?
Yes.
And he's like, we? Like, what are you talking about? Oh, we means you. And he's like,
means you.
what? He's like super confused. It's really like kind of a funny interaction. I really like this conversation between them.
No, I do too,
I think Rikku and Titus have a pretty good like chemistry during this like early portion of the game.
Yeah.
But he basically tries to explain that he's from Zanarkand. He's like, I play on the Zanarkand Abes. I'm like a star blitzball player.
Yes.
Don't you know me?
Yep.
And she's like, that's not possible.
Yeah.
Because Zanarkand was destroyed 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And this is the big reveal.
That's the reveal
where it's like,
holy cow.
wait a second. Like, what?
Yeah.
And it's really effective at kind of being a gut punch moment like that. Because,
I think so, yeah.
and I think we will get into this more later, much later. Whether it's believable how the culture evolved over a 1,000-year time span
and the
or
language
time scale,
and
and blitzball being mostly the same as it was before, and
Right.
things like that we'll talk about later, because I'm still having conversations about that with people and learning about that. But it's, there's something about 1,000 years that is way heavier than, say, 100 years.
Sure, yeah.
Let's say it would have been more believable for the development of the society to say it was 100 or 200 years,
Yeah.
right?
So that way things hadn't changed as much.
Yeah. But that's not, because you can imagine, I feel like a person can reasonably imagine what the world 100 years might look like.
Sure.
That's like a very long-lived, but like the lifespan of a human being is 100 years. You can
something like that.
you can assume like, oh, I can understand 100 years, like intuitively understand 100 years. That doesn't feel like the gut punch in the same way that 1,000 years does.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine what the world will look like 1,000 years from now. Like, no way.
It's funny, because it's like in 100 years, you can reasonably assume, I'm not making this a full prediction, but you can reasonably assume that the United States of America will still be a country.
Right.
In 100 years, it will still be a country.
Yeah.
80% sure. 1,000 years, it's like that. It's like 1% that it might even still possibly be a country still.
Dude.
Like, it's just, everything changes so much when you put it in that long of a time frame.
There's a lot of countries that existed not that long ago that no longer exist, or were changed entirely or whatever.
Yeah, the boundaries, everything, I
remember, is it the Holy Roman Empire that lasted all the way up to like, hold on.
Well, the Roman Empire dissolved around 375 AD or something.
No, but like it continued in a way.
The Byzantine and then the Roman, you're right, it did continue in a way.
To 1806. I was like, what the fetch? So
but 1430 though. What is that from?
Yeah, this is what I'm saying is like, I always thought of it like it was dissolved like
It was
a couple thousand years ago.
Yeah, I feel like
And it was. But what I'm saying is that like in the span of 1,000 years, there are major major changes on these sorts of things. Like who is in power? Who is like the which country is the, what would you call it, the superpower of the world? Religions change immensely over 1,000 years. You imagine, I mean, there's still religions today that existed more than 1,000 years ago, but they're not the same.
They've changed a lot.
They've had to evolve with society as it evolved what it deems acceptable or moral, or as the moral compass of society shifted, the church had to kind of follow with it, or else it would no longer exist.
I think the best example of that would be that Jews no longer sacrifice animals. And it's not because of some like new doctrine revealed. It's just, well, I think they say the temple was destroyed and then they just don't do it anymore. It's like, well, that used to be like core to the religion. And if you brought a Jew back from then to today and say, oh, Jews don't sacrifice anymore, they'd be like, blasphemy, you know, it'd be so different to them that it would just be like very startling.
And then like, now I actually am very curious about this. I wonder whether like sports sort of invented in the modern time and preserved as well as they are, documented video footage, like archived.
Oh, I see.
Whether those sports
would preserve
longer, more or less with the same rules.
Probably,
and things like that.
Probably, maybe.
Like, will the NFL more or less be the same game 1,000 years from now? I feel that's more likely than a sport from 1,000 years ago.
Look at the NFL 100 years ago, though.
Yeah, it's changed. It's definitely changed.
And we still have video of it. So the question is, do they continue making video of it? If there's a moment where, boom, there's no more video of the NFL, which seems to be what happened here. All of a sudden, boom, no more blitzball videos. And the technology to make videos doesn't even exist anymore.
Well, that's another weird thing.
Then you do have to reference the old library. But now if you keep making new videos, then nobody cares about how football was 50 years ago.
Yes.
Because we can still see videos of how it's evolving now and we don't care how it was.
Right.
But if all of a sudden all we had was what it was, then it would preserve it better, I think.
Yes. That's another thing I'm still not totally, and I think we'll
the technology
learn this
level
as we continue through the game, and the details will come back to me. But there are cameras in Spira. Like they have cameras a little bit later in the playthrough.
In some of the
So it's like,
cities.
I don't really know like
what's their level at?
Which parts of the technology survived this sin-apocalyptic event 1,000 years ago that like changed the course of the world or not. Those details are not completely clear to me.
Okay.
But regardless, blitzball would probably not look anything like
probably be quite
what Titus played
in
his time.
Maybe a ball, a goal, and water would probably be the similarities.
Yeah.
And even, you can look at all, like football came from rugby, which came from soccer.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Soccer.
Right. Yes.
I like, that was only 150 years ago.
Yes.
And the sport just changed and different people played it different ways. And all of a sudden, it's completely different.
Yes. And so like soccer still exists, obviously. And like it's more or less played the same way as it has been since it was invented. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't change as much as I think it would, particularly with as well documented as our lives and our societies are now, right?
Yeah.
But if the world of Spira is meant to be more like a return to a dark ages technologically and everything like that, it probably would change a lot more. But the point is, 1,000 years is way more of a gut punch than 100 years.
Yes.
It's like impossible for me to imagine what the world will look like in 1,000 years. I can't even begin to guess that.
You know what's weird? Like the beginning of the game, we meet a couple of kids. It's conceivable 100 years later that maybe one of those kids is still alive.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Like maybe.
Definitely. Yes.
Especially if they're Japanese. It's like, sure, maybe.
Yeah.
But 1,000 years, it's just like everything you know is obliterated.
Yes. Okay, so anyways, it's a big revelation there.
Yeah, that's huge. And then she also tells us, like, don't tell people that you played for the Xanarkand Apes.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a good idea.
You're going to, like, upset people if you say this, right?
Yes,
like, don't tell people that you're from Xanarkand. And she says, you were near sin. Don't worry, you'll be better in no time. They say your head gets funny when sin is near. Maybe you just had some kind of dream. And he's like, you mean I'm sick? And she says, because of sin's toxin, yeah. So this is what he begins to use as his excuse.
His go-to.
Anytime he doesn't know something.
And he even feels bad for using it all the time because he's like, I so don't belong here. This is ridiculous.
He's like, starts to feel pathetic for like having to constantly say, oh, I got 2 near sin's toxin. That's why I don't know this thing I should know.
But to an extent it works. People do accept it and think, okay, all right.
Yeah. But she suggests that he should go to Luca, since he's a blitzball player. It's like, maybe somebody there will know you. If you're a famous blitzball player, like someone has to know you because that's where they play blitzball, is in Luca, where they have their stadium and everything. So you should go there next. And so she promises to take him there, then tells him not to tell anyone that he's from Zanarkand. On that, she says, Yevon says Zanarkand is a holy place. You might upset someone, right?
Right, so there'd be some blasphemy element there.
Zanarkand has become, and we see this a little later too with the symbol that they made, the blitzball symbol becoming like a religious prayer sort of a thing, and Zanarkand being this holy place. He's like, my Zanarkand? Some kind of holy place? Yeah, right, I thought. Since when? I just thought sin took me to a faraway place and that I could go back in a day or two. But 1,000 years in the future? No way! And he gets something like,
is that how he says it?
Kicks the ship. But this is when sin ends up attacking.
One thing that I didn't mention this last episode, but very specifically about Zanarkand, the idea that it could become a holy city is kind of preposterous. Like it's a corporate advertising, like there's logos everywhere. It's very, what would be the word? Hedonistic. It's a materialistic, it's a be sports fans and stay up late at night and party and buy consumerism culture. Yeah. There's no hint of anything religious other than the fact that sports are inherently kind of religious. Anyways, and especially the fandom around it. But that's not evident to your average sports fan. So it's just like the fact that would become a holy city is kind of laughable, especially on Titus's end, where he's just like, what? Zanarkand's not a holy city.
No way.
You go there to buy groceries and watch your sports team and get drunk, and then
exactly.
That's what Zanarkand was for him, right?
Right.
You go meet girls, and
he
then
knows
you flash
all of
your
the vices of the Zanarkand lifestyle and culture.
And it seems it seems to be that way.
So anyways, Sin attacks the ship. This is where you
just kind of out of nowhere
wash ashore in Besaid. And he gets really ecstatic to see a blitzball.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, it's sick. And so he does this cool, like,
but once again, we're
move.
face down in the water.
Yes, right.
They do make a point to that. He's face down in a way that would kill most people.
Yeah.
And so they're really trying to make a point that, like, he can do this. This is okay.
Yeah.
Because it would have been so obvious. Like, just put him face up. Like, why have him face down?
Yeah.
But blitzball flies past, and he's just like, "Oh man, all right, I'll show them." And so he does one of his like killer moves. He heads the ball up and flips and kicks it, and that's where Wakka is just like, "Whoa,
everyone's so impressed."
Yeah, he's just like, "Yeah, man." I love that freeze or the frame that it kind of rests on after he does his surprise face. It's just kind of like a pleasant little smile with squinty eyes. Just like it's so funny. I love
it. And he's like, "Oh, can you show us that move again?" Right, and he's like, "All right, like my things were starting to look up, kind of a thing. Like I'm actually familiar with something in this world. Finally.
Yes,
blitzball is something I can relate to these people with."
And I think that's in one of his little monologue things. I like that they do it, by the way. I like the internal dialogue or the internal monologue, I guess, that we get with him occasionally. Yeah. But he says the only two things that were similar between Spira and Zanarkand, where he was from, is. Sin and death,
blitzball.
Or blitzball. I'll bring up the death part later. But sin and blitzball were the only two similarities as far as he could tell. But he was stoked that blitzball was a thing. Yeah. One question though, when he does his special move and kicks that blitzball, it goes pretty far away. Like, do they just have tons of blitzballs, or do they go get that ball every time? Because he's just kicking it. When he does it the second time, he kicks it out over the water.
Yeah, it goes
and it's
really
like,
far.
all right, dude.
I'm guessing somebody swam at
You're not playing blitzball anymore
maybe
after
they
that.
have a bunch of blitzballs, but
I think it's great.
kind of like golf balls, right? You gotta you're gonna lose them all the time, so you gotta have like a whole bag.
Yeah, exactly.
Full of golf
Just
balls.
have a ton. But those things are big.
Yep.
But he, it's so funny. like blitzballs would be a hard sport to practice. That might be another way that it's preserved for a long time. It's not like people can just make up their own rules as they play it with each other in different regions.
Oh, sure.
You need the crazy setup to be able to create the sphere of water play it in the first place. So that almost forces a centralized version of the thing that can maybe last longer.
Play it in the ocean though. Like if you could just take goals down and just tie them to the bottom of the.
Say this is out of bounds.
And just like play in the ocean.
There's like a court set up on it too.
Yeah, that's true.
It would be hard, but I would assume you could play it in any water.
Yeah.
But you never really see that throughout the game.
That's true.
So maybe not.
I wrote down though, like they ask him who he is or whatever, and he says what team he plays for, I should say. And he, like a moron, he's just like, the Xander Canabes.
Oh, wait.
The Xander Canabes. It's like he was just told.
But I got near sin and I'm all fuzzy. Yeah, he uses that excuse like right away.
He was just told, don't tell people you're from Xanderkin. And the first thing he fetching says is, I'm from the Xander Canabes.
Well, he's so stoked that he can show off.
That's
and
true.
That maybe that girl was messing with him and maybe these people know.
That's true too.
About
he doesn't necessarily believe her yet.
Not yet, no.
Which is why he decides to ask Wakka directly. Hey, so Xanderkin really was destroyed 1,000 years ago, huh? Right. He's like, oh yeah, and he tells him the whole story. And he's like, well, now 2 people have told me this. Neither of them have a reason to lie to me.
Yeah, exactly. Out of the mouth of 2 witnesses. Yeah, exactly.
Just like we were saying before.
Yes.
But so now it's like, well, this really is happening. Like this really is 1,000 years in the future. I don't know how this happened, but I really like his response to this. And it's kind of a nice change, not necessarily like from the squall and the cloud sort of like main characters that are very kind of like, how do I put it? Not negative, but just like really rough characters and like not very personable and kind of cold. He's a very warm character, a little bit like, you know, Zidane from FF9 or something.
More like
that,
yeah.
But I like his response to this. Like, he doesn't like fold under it or get like super depressed or just like get really cold about it.
That's true.
He basically says, like, takes a proactive attitude about it. Maybe if I could find Sin one more time, I could go home. He brought me here, so maybe he can take me back, right? For now, I just have to live life until that time came. No more worrying about where or when I was. Sure, it was hard to think of home, but I started to feel better already, a little better maybe. So like he's just taking it in stride. He's like, I can't control this right now. I'm not going to worry about it. Let's just try to make a life here until I can find Sin again, and then maybe I can find a way to go home. But like until then, I'm not going to like worry about it too much.
Like that is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It's just not what most people.
Most people would not react that way, but he does, and I like that aspect of his character. I think it's a nice like sort of fresh type of character as like your leading protagonist, particularly in Final Fantasy during this era. But
yeah, and I do like that they do that, the Yevon salute, whatever you'd call it.
Oh yeah, this.
And this is the first point where we see it, and in its religious context,
right?
And you don't see it.
because he says when he got too close to Sin, they're like, they're like praying.
Sin. Oh yes,
like oh, so sorry.
Like it's kind of like drawing a cross and saying bless you. You know,
it's more or less exactly.
It's more or less that. Yeah.
Yes.
And so that's like what they're doing. Like okay, but it's not until a little bit later when they teach Tidus how to do it that he elaborates why that was so startling for him. You know, but it's interesting to see, at least in general, right? Like the religious, what did I write down here? Yeah, it's a praise to the gods, which isn't too different from what it was before.
Yeah, right.
The symbol actually doesn't represent, it's not that different. It's just, who are the gods? Are they your man-made idols, or are they, you know,
is it
the
Yevon,
holy,
or is it
the holy gods?
Star Blitzball icons?
Exactly, but it's reverence either way, if you think about it that way. So that's why I'm like, wow, it actually makes sense. That's kind of cool.
So as they're heading to the village, Wakka asks Tidus to join his Blitzball team. And he says, it's so huge, I'm sure, like the tournament they're going to go to.
Yeah.
It's so huge, I'm sure someone there will recognize you. Then you can go back to your old team, right? So
there's an inherent conflict in this, though, right?
Yes.
Where it's like, hey, play for me. We're going to Luca. Once we're there, you'll find your old team. But
and you can play for them.
And then you play for them. But it's like, what if, let's say, what if he does find his old team there, but he's promised this guy to play, so he'd have to compete against his team. I don't know. I just think it's funny. It's like, almost for sure, as far as Wakka knows, his team is out there, and as soon as you get to Luca, he's going to find his team. Yeah. Well, there's a little bit of a paradox here, I think. But
Wakka's
at the very
probably
least,
just not like thinking it through completely.
No, which is kind of his character.
Or maybe even hoping maybe he won't remember. And he can just be on my team, but I can give him hope for this so that he'll agree to be on my team.
Right, because I'll do something for him, because that's kind of his only hope, At this point, it's like, well, he might find his other team, but like, I'm just going to hope really hard that he stays on my side, because he's really freaking good.
I really liked how he says this, and then Titus is showing a little bit of just like a sort of downtrodden expression here. He's just kind of like, sure thing, I'll do it. But he's just going to like, lackadaisically swimming, his thoughts are reeling.
Yes.
Yeah, but Wakka's response to this is, dude, our team's gonna rock. He doesn't like care. He's just like stoked that he's gonna have like an awesome player in his team.
Oh, that's so funny.
I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, that's great.
And that's when he says what you were bringing up. I thought then that Sin and Blitzball were the only two things that Spira and Xanark had in common. I wasn't too far off either.
Right. That's basically it.
Yeah, so they go into his village, and Wakka begins explaining that 10 years, for 10 years of his Blitzball career, he's never won a game, even one time. He's never won one time.
That's kind of crazy.
And he retired, apparently, but now he's gotten back into it. He retired, and he says, I got this new job, which is his guardianship.
He's a guardian.
He became a guardian for you.
Of a summoner.
Yeah. But he doesn't say that yet, right? He says, but every time my mind wandered, I thought about the game. So he couldn't quite let go of Blitzball. So he's kind of coming back for one more like tournament. With this tournament they're going to go to in Luca, and then he's going to really for sure retire. But he wants to win.
It sounded like he was actually close to winning his first game when he retired. But I think he mentions this to Titus. And he's like, but my mind was fuzzy and I was thinking of something else. And Titus was like, excuses. And Wakka's like, whatever. This is one thing I love about Wakka. Every now and then, people will kind of make him the butt of a joke or rip on him a little. He takes it all so well.
Yeah.
He just smiles. Like Lulu does this, and a lot of people will do this. They'll just kind of like, they'll say something to him that some people would take offensive.
Yes.
Like Leon from FF8.
Oh, sure.
Squall. For example, I always call him Leon because I played Kingdom Hearts first.
Yes.
But so from then on, whereas it's like, oh, those are fighting words. I'm going to fight you. But Wakka just smiles. He's just got this chill attitude where he's just like, nah, like he's not going to take offense easily. He's very slow to anger. It's a cool aspect of him.
And what I really like about that, and I won't say too much about this yet to avoid spoiling something that'll probably come up in the next episode or maybe two from now, is that I really like that they attach you to Wakka first.
Oh, yeah.
Based on where this character, certain things about him that will be revealed soon, that might make you feel more conflicted about him. Mm-hmm. Like, they really make you like him first. They have a bond that like feels very genuine and real between Titus and Wakka. And I think that that's very important for the storytelling in order for this part of the game's theme to work.
Sure.
And have nuance and to actually like be something that can be conflicting for people. So I really, really like how they attach you to him early on.
Nice.
For that reason. On your way down, you encounter the two Crusader duo, Luzu and Gata. And you'll see them over and over again throughout the story.
That conversation is interesting.
Yeah, this is where Wakka explains how to pray again, the Blitzball symbol, right? The hand gesture.
Yeah.
And he's like, do you remember how to pray? He's like, no. He's like, what? Like, how could you not remember?
Step back and you do the thing.
And this is when he's like, this was the symbol of victory.
I know.
In my time. This is not religious at all.
Yeah, well,
like, what's going on?
Exactly.
I also
and he's like, every Blitzball player in the world knows what that means. Like, that was a cool moment. I love that moment right there where he's just like, of course I knew how to do the salute.
Yes. I really loved this too. It was just funny. When they run into the two Crusaders and they leave, I think Titus asks him something about like, who were those guys or something. And Wakka's like, oh, they were Crusaders. And Titus says, "Crews of what?" Like, he doesn't know what the word crusader is. He does not know the word crusader. I thought that was hilarious. Crews of what?
Crews of what?
He's like, dude, like, this is, and I especially like it because it's like he doesn't know anything, right?
He knows literally
And
nothing.
so when you go and talk to the crusaders in their like tent there in the village, they explain who the crusaders are.
Yeah.
For 800 years, they've been trying to combat sin.
Yeah.
We've steered sin away from towns many times, but we've never been able to defeat it. That's all we could do. And, because Titus is asking all these questions, like, how have you not, like, defeated it yet? Like, what? He doesn't know anything.
It's pretty funny, too, because they're like, oh, we've done great. We've been able to lure it away and stuff. And he's like, yeah, but you haven't succeeded at all. Like, you guys are kind of suck at what you do. Sin's still around. And it's like this like moment where they're just like feeling bad. And
he basically says that it's not there. He says something along the lines of it's not that they can't do it, right? And Titus says, whose job is it to defeat sin? And then Gata's response, and I love even the way the voice actor puts it, it's just so good. Is sin's toxin really this bad, sir?
That's right. Is sin's toxin really this bad? Because Titus is so just absent. It's so funny.
Anything. Like, how is it possible for someone not to know this? Could sin's toxin actually be that bad? And then so Luzo's like, it does seem pretty bad. It does seem
because I'm sure they've met other people who've had this happen, and it's nothing like Titus, right? Just like forgetting everything.
So he's like, look, I could explain all this to you, but it's probably better that you try to remember it. So just
this
go
is like
out
kindergarten stuff
and live and just like, pray some more, and hopefully like Yevon will help you restore your memory. Because like, it's going to do no good for us to just tell you literally everything.
They'd have to start from the beginning, right? It's like, that's so funny.
Yeah, I really liked that scene.
I think it's revealed during this conversation that they've been excommunicated as well from Yevon.
Yes.
So, and it's partly because, like, well, gosh, how do I explain this? These two have been excommunicated. But because of that, they couldn't go with us like into the temple and stuff.
Yes,
right? It's like they're not allowed to go into the temple and stuff.
Yes.
But they still believe though, right?
Yes.
That's
still,
the interesting part.
They still believe, but they're willing to do things that are against the teachings of Yevon to try to fight sin.
And that seems to be like, that's kind of what the Crusaders do more or less. Like they are
sacrifice
on the side of the church.
Their standing in the religion to protect the
Yeah,
people of Spira, kind of a thing.
And we'll get into what that means later on, like what they're doing specifically
Yes.
or how they're doing it. But it's enough to say, it's interesting, the first people that we meet who are talking about saying, hey, go pray, go to Yevon and all this stuff, maybe not the first, but the first in-depth conversation we've had about this are from people who've been excommunicated from the church, right? They're not allowed to do this.
Right.
And that's an interesting way to introduce something where they're still friendly to it and they're telling us to do it. Oh, but we can't. But everyone else can. But
they've been excommunicated.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Okay, so you go rest. Oh no, wait! You go into the temple first.
Yeah,
and you see people praying.
Well, first off, I have to say, I played the original game years ago, and this time I'm playing like the remaster. It looks really good.
Yeah.
The textures are really, really good. The detail's phenomenal.
Square Enix recently has come under fire for bad ports or lazy remasters of things.
Yeah.
Whether it's the PlayStation 1 FF game remasters,
those ones.
which don't bother to upscale the backgrounds, but the characters are really crisp and the backgrounds are
I hate that.
really low resolution.
I hate it when that happens.
Certain things that people pick at and be like, why can't you go through the effort to make a really good remaster of this amazing game?
Yeah.
This cannot be said about Final Fantasy X remaster.
It's really
good. Very well done.
Yeah.
On basically all accounts. It's hard to complain about anything unless you're going to complain about the differences in the faces. Titus's face and Yuna's face.
They didn't reanimate everything, and the faces do look. They don't look
weird.
quite like the FMVs.
Yeah.
My wife commented on this almost every time. Every time an FMV would show Yuna, my wife would be like, "Oh, she's pretty." Oh my god, jeez. It doesn't look the same.
Well, yeah, because they have completely different models for those, right?
Yeah, very different. And her cheekbones
way higher
and
polygons
the eyes,
and different, like way better textures and
better, but also they look different. They really do look like different people, at least subtly, but still.
I've always wondered like what they do for that. Like, do they? Would it not be? Well, would it? Anyone who does 3D modeling, I've only done like this much of it ever, so like I don't understand completely what the method behind this would be in the context of game development. Would you not take your high polygon Yuna model that you use in the FMVs? Or actually, this is another part of this. There's sometimes it's a different company that does the FMV
a different
sequences.
company. In fact, that was the case here. It's like a second party. It's like an internal Square thing, but it's separate. It wasn't part of the dev team.
But I would wonder why you wouldn't have shared assets.
You would think so.
Right? But anyways, let's say you had access to...
I think they do it the opposite, though. You're saying, why don't they design the high poly model first and then base the low poly off of it?
Then
that's not... They do it otherwise, They do it the other way.
Just remove polygons...
That is a better way.
But I know, like, specifically for hair, you would really have to do this on the PS2 because they couldn't. Yeah, like, anyways, just basically to replace the whole hair.
Yeah.
But maybe that would have been a better way to go about it so that they look more similar. Because I remember just from this era in general, they never look the same.
Not
like
close
in the
enough.
Prince of Persia games, it's the same way.
Tidus is like pretty close.
Yeah.
Yuna is really not
like
very close.
In the Prince of Persia games, I always thought this was weird too. Not only does he look completely different from the FMV sequences to how he looks in the regular gameplay. He looks different in every game.
No, he
so
does.
Like the first, second,
true.
and third game, he's like his whole face changes.
It's quite different.
It's just like really annoying. Like use the same model, please. Like,
or at least make it look the same. Yeah.
So, anyways, aside from that, models looking a little different from their PS2 counterparts, which I think they looked better on PS2.
Yeah.
This is an excellent remaster. Really excellent. So he's in there, and he's seeing people praying, and they have statues of other high summoners, right?
Yeah.
So this is where he learns about Lord Braska, the last high summoner.
Because that was the most recent statue to be
who had defeated Sin 10 years ago.
Yeah, before the previous calm, or the current calm.
Yeah. So, or he set out 10 years ago anyways. I think he actually defeated Sin something like 8 years ago.
Oh, okay.
In the timeline of this, because anyways, we'll learn more about a previous attempt that was made very recently that failed, that Lulu was a part of. But in any case, it was a very short, what they call calm period. The calm periods are the periods in which the High Summoner banishes Sin for a while and they can live peacefully. This is another thing that is fuzzy as a detail to me that I'm hoping through talking to, look out for this NPC as you're playing. Machen, he's an older man in like kind of green robes and like a long white beard. He's basically the lore NPC of this game.
Oh, nice.
You talk to him and he explains everything about the world.
Nice.
So I'm going to be looking out for him and for other hints about how this works, because I think that the calm periods are of different lengths.
I had the idea that the calm periods were getting shorter and shorter.
I've heard that too.
I don't know if that's
And
accurate.
I think there is some evidence for that, and there are other people who say no. So this is something I've heard conflicting accounts of between different fans of Final Fantasy X, and I don't think they ever specify, even in the Ultimania, like specifically how long each calm period was. But I do think they are different lengths. I don't think they're all like a decade or less, like this.
Like every time. The idea each time is that it's the last time, something like that, right?
Yeah, like they think this is going to be permanent this time.
I talk about, in my notes here, I do talk about the idea of a spiral, which is what Spira means. It's the idea of a spiral is that it is a cycle that is different each time.
Yes.
And that actually has a beginning and an end.
Yes.
Whereas a circle is the same and has no beginning or end. A spiral varies slightly each time.
Sure.
But it does eventually end, and it does start at a beginning. So anyways, Spira being based on the word spiral as opposed to, the idea of a circle being the cycle, it might actually be. What you're saying kind of lends to the idea that I think was part of the theme of the world, right?
Yeah. Anyways, so this is Lord Braska. He was the last
Yes.
High Summoner. They've got him memorialized as a statue there.
This temple's sweet, by the way.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's freaking cool.
Again, he has to make the excuse that he got too close to Sin's toxin.
This is where he mentioned specifically. He's
Yeah.
like, oh, I feel so stupid
Like,
saying this every
can't believe
time.
I have to say this over and over.
Yeah, but they are legitimately like disturbed by his lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
Like he's like, who's Braska? What do summoners do? And everyone's just like, oh, and they all do the sign,
Yeah,
the
like-
holy, and he's just like, and they're like, dude, you're kind of this close to blaspheming and
Yes.
getting like sentenced to death or excommunicated.
And then he very,
he's just
very
like, oh,
deliberately
oh.
crosses that line.
I know, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. It's so funny.
Because he goes back to Wakka's hut, and someone comes to Wakka, who is a guardian of Yuna. We're going to learn here in a second.
Yeah.
And it's like, they haven't come out yet. Like, something might be wrong. And he's like, well, we can't interfere. That's against
Yeah.
the rules. He was like, but like,
And it's been over a day.
it's been a long
that was
time.
Note here, it's been over a day
so
since she entered that temple,
so
and
Wakka,
she's still there.
So Wakka goes to the temple, and we have a little dream sequence again here with Tidus. It's a memory more, I guess, but where it's like where his mother is being informed that Jecht was lost at
Yes,
sea.
yeah.
And child Tidus is like, who
He's
cares,
like, who cares?
whether he comes
Yeah,
back
let
or
him
not?
die.
And she's like, but he might die. And he says, fine, let him. Do you hate him so? And he's nodding his head. If he dies, you'll never be able to tell him how much you hate him. Now, this is just
Yeah,
like,
that was interesting.
this is actually true even of Cowboy Bebop, which we're going to be talking about next
Oh, yeah.
for our exclusive Patreon podcast. In anime and RPGs like this, I feel like they really overdo kids' voices, like the whininess of it.
Yeah.
Like really overdo it. Like this does not sound like a child. It sounds like
Yeah.
an adult. What an adult thinks a child whining sounds like.
An adult who hates kids.
Yeah. Who cares if he comes back or not?
That's pretty funny.
Fine, let him. You know,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Uh,
Anyways, it's not like a big deal. It's just something I notice a lot
That's funny.
in anime. Like anytime a kid is being voiced by an adult, they like make them really whiny for some
Yeah,
reason
yeah.
like that.
But the idea is, Tidus really hates his father.
He really hates his
apparently
dad a
a lot. And given that the mother is so worried, you would think, well, maybe Tidus's hate for his father isn't
Justified.
justified.
Yeah.
Yeah. There would have to be some weird situation where the mother is that okay with the kid who hates his father that much.
Yes.
Maybe there's
Or-
some misremembering going on, or maybe there's something.
Does she
else
not
here.
know of
Or is she
something
unaware?
he's doing?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Like we're going
It's
to
weird.
learn more about it later,
We
obviously.
will. But there's, there's
the fact that she doesn't appear to think of Jecht at all in the way that Tidus does
Yeah, not even close.
suggests something is
Yeah.
probably different than the way Tidus perceives it to
Yeah.
be.
And this was a decade ago.
Yeah.
So, Tidus has grown up a lot since then, and who knows what was going on there.
Whether what he remembers is
Yeah.
entirely accurate.
I want to talk just briefly about the temple, just a little bit.
Yeah, go
Because
ahead.
it's so cool. As soon as we walk in, the camera kind of tilts up, and you see these two big statues, right? Similar to, and this was not an accident.
Blitzball.
At the Blitzball arena,
Yeah.
there were two statues holding their spears right in front of the entrance to that temple, right? Now this temple but it's on the interior part. Once you walk in, you see these two big statues. And there's some really cool symbolism going on here. There's a woman statue on the left, right? And then on the right, you have a man statue. And the woman is symbolized with a moon. The man is symbolized with a sun. There's the yin and yang thing going on
yeah.
here. And the woman is as naked as video games allow
Sure.
statue women to be, at least at that time. And that is like a nature, kind of the idea of like a pure nature, kind of natural person. And then the male figure is just clothed like for the severest winter that is coming, just like tons, just robes upon robes, and just like all the flowing garments, And he's got a beard, and it's like it's sort of a juxtaposition the way they show it because they edit it together, but the contrast there is really cool. So you've got a yin and yang thing going on here. But what's even cooler is that in between the two of them, there is a mandala on the ground, just this most beautiful, massive mandala, just the coolest design, right? And that design means 100 different things. But before I go into that, above the mandala is the entrance to the temple where the summoners go to procure the aeons, right?
Oh, right.
And that is like you've got the people, the mandala, and then above the mandala is the ion, or at least where the ion is summoned. And you'll notice when ions are summoned in this game that there's this big mandala that shows up first,
on the ground, yeah.
and then
they swoop in.
They will swoop in based on that design or whatever, and being called forth by a summoner. Anyways,
I wonder.
It's pretty
We'd
cool.
have to look closely at this, but I wonder if the design of that temple corresponds with the Valifor sign. So when she summons Valifor specifically, is
Valifor?
that symbol the same? And is it different for Ifrit or the other summons?
Each Aeon, it's a different mandala, but these are the mandalas for summoning Aeons.
And I wonder if
the one at the temple is different than all of these.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the one at the temple is super, super cool. It's way more intricate. It's bigger. It's just got more going on there. The whole game is almost summarized in this mandala. So I'm not going to go into massive specifics about it, but just like look at it and just like look at this mandala, and you basically see the story of the game.
Wow.
It's really cool.
That's crazy.
But I can just talk about just a couple things here. So on the ground, you see there's the octafoil. You have to look up what all these mean if you want to spoil the game for yourself. But there's an octafoil, which has several meanings, but it can mean the O-Goad. By the way, the O-Goad is like, you have the monad. This is the first ion, right?
Yes.
This is Gnostic. Yes. I think this game's like heavily Gnostic influenced, by the way. So because the word aeon is kind of a Gnostic word.
Yeah.
But the monad is the one, right? Mono, one, monad, and then the doad, and the triad. Anyways, it goes all the way down to the O-Goad, which is the first 8 gods, right? But that is a thing. It's a specific thing within Gnosticism, is that the O-Goad are considered the first emanations of God, and that's like a generation.
Yeah.
And then it goes from there down about all the other different gods and stuff. But it's 8. The number's 8, and the number of ions in this game is 8. So
that's true. The aeons 8. Yeah.
You have the octafoil, which is all the circles, together in 8 of them. And then you have the 8-leafed white lotus, which represents transformation and meditation or mediation. And the white lotus is an Eastern symbol. This temple is very Eastern. Having been to Japan and gone to like Shinto shrines and stuff, like the statues and everything that's around, and just kind of the atmosphere of the whole place, it's very Eastern. It feels very Hindu, Buddhist type, and even Shinto as well. So at the very beginning, you have a cross that's surrounded by the white lotus, surrounded by the octafoil, surrounded by earth, surrounded by multiple circles with a gap. Anyways, I say I can analyze this one symbol to death, and it would give away the entire game. It's such a fascinating symbol, but I think it'd be fun to take another look at this at the end of the game. Yeah, maybe when we're done with this podcast, to come back, and then maybe I can walk everyone through like what this means, because it's really cool. It's really cool, and it's not unintentional. In fact, I have a quote here from Tetsuya Nomura saying that, and he did the characters, but I think it was a general philosophy for the whole game, that he no longer, which implies he used to do this, he says, I no longer want to design characters based on just arbitrary symbols and things. I want it all to mean something.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, well, they freaking did that in this game, that is for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm actually excited for that, because I didn't really even look at that at all.
I only did because I'm just like freaking way into it these days. But yeah, it's cool. But so anyways, Tidus is hearing about this. Everyone's worried about this summoner, Yuna, and they're just like, she's in there. And he's like, okay, so therefore,
like,
let's go get her.
Go get her. And
go,
it's like,
check on her.
It's against the rules or whatever.
Yeah, we're not allowed to go see her. He's like, well, screw you
I like
guys.
his line is, like I care.
Like I care.
He just runs in.
And he runs in. And I love this. I love how he's just breaking their religious rules. I think it's great, because when an outsider comes in, one of the things that an outsider, there's like the archetype of the fool, and this is a big deal within like a tarot card deck has the fool. One of the cards is the fool, and there's like half of the cards in the tarot card deck outline basically the fool's journey, and how the fool is just bumbling through life and wanders into the other different archetypes that are set out within the tarot cards, right? But the idea is that he's a fool. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't know what's going on. But the fool, kind of like the court jester in a court, by being a fool, you are allowed to kind of reveal the ridiculousness of whatever system is going on,
Yes,
right? Like
yes.
an old saying is that the only person allowed to criticize the king was his jester.
So
right?
you're saying this is a fool's journey,
This
not
is
a
the
hero's
fool's
journey.
Actually, the fool's journey and the hero's journey overlap quite a bit. But yes, this is the fool's journey. This game is the fool's journey. Anyways, it doesn't mean fool like he's totally stupid.
Yeah.
But
he
Titus,
kind of is.
Titus kind of is.
He kind of is.
But I love it because the fool can really show a system that is in need of change.
Yeah.
And the fool can step into that system unknowingly and kind of just poke fun at it and get people to see it in a different way, you know.
Yeah.
But he just runs right through.
Yep.
I freaking love it. I thought it was so funny.
So you go through your first cloister of trials.
Now, I thought somebody was going to stop us.
Nope.
They're like, don't go, don't. Whatever, he's gone. And then
Wakka comes
I guess
in,
the
but-
priests just stay there. You know, it's
Well,
like
because they can't go in.
Oh, that's a good point. Oh my gosh, you're right. Okay, there you go. You're right.
They can't.
That- I
It's
didn't think
against
of
the
that.
freaking rules.
So okay, that's fine.
So it's just like, well, fetch. Like, we can't do anything about it. Wakka can because he's a guardian.
He's
so he
a guardian.
Goes in.
Yeah, he can go in.
But anyways, he catches up with you after you do your cloister of trials, right?
Yeah.
But
Takes him a while.
This is where you meet Yuna for the first time. She finally emerges from whatever she was
and she's
doing
in
there.
She's like
exhausted.
in a daze. Yeah.
And just like almost like falls over, and Kimahri runs up and like catches
Oh,
her.
that shot was great, by the way.
Yeah.
So as soon as she starts falling and you see Titus
Yeah.
like gesture as though he's
It
moving
looks
forward,
like he's gonna go
and
catch
then
her.
someone catches her.
Yeah.
You don't, and then it zooms out and it was someone else.
Yes.
That was cool.
It was really well done.
And I don't even, like, it's such a simple thing, but that was really cool.
Yeah.
That shows, like, it really shows the dedication of Kimahri, first of all. He's got his eye on her.
Yeah.
And he's making sure that whatever happens, he is able to help her out.
This
right?
happens again really soon on the boat as you're heading to the Kilika port
yeah.
when Sin attacks. Like,
Yes, Kimahri.
Titus is holding her hand, but he slips from her.
Yeah.
And Kimahri's the one who keeps her
He's
from
the one that
falling off.
grabs her. Yeah. And Kimahri's just a beast, right?
He's always protected her, she says,
Yes.
from when she was a little girl.
from before.
So he's always been around for her. Yeah.
And that's a perfect character intro for him.
Yeah.
I would have so assumed it was Titus. I was surprised, shocked not only to see that it was Kimahri, but that Kimahri is our first like monster-ish looking dude,
Yeah.
like not human
The Ronzo
person.
people.
Yeah, and it's like, first off, there's a lot of things going on there. So there's like a contrast that is very startling to see. But like artistically, it couldn't have been done better. I really thought that he caught her because they used
Yeah.
the juxtaposition to
Yes.
to make me think that. Like I loved it. It was so
I
good.
noticed that too. I thought that was really
Yeah.
well done. Let's see. Oh, we forgot to say this. This comes up again with the Blitzball people. I guess we'll just go over it then.
Okay.
She is successful, but she overestimated or underestimated the difficulty
the thing
of what she
overestimated
was going
herself.
to do. Overestimated
Yeah, yeah.
her own abilities.
Yes,
And
yeah.
so that's why she took so long.
Yeah.
But she came out successful.
And we don't even know what she was doing in there. It
Yeah,
was
she's
just,
it's like the holy of holies of this
Yes,
world.
yep.
Right.
The inner
But
sanctum.
she gains the ability to summon her first Aeon.
Yes.
Valor
And
form.
then, yeah, as soon as she's like feeling better and not so dizzy,
Yeah.
she like brushes her hair out and
Demonstrates
smiles,
it
and she's like,
for the whole
everybody.
village.
Well, but even before that, while she's still there, she's just
Oh.
like, I did it, you know. But she couldn't do it so well right then and there,
Yeah.
right? She was too tired.
Yeah.
But just a little bit later, and she kind of gets her energy
Recovers a
back,
little bit.
and she's just like so excited, you
Yeah.
know. And then then it takes us out. I thought we were going to meet her right then and there, but we don't.
Nope.
And then she's outside, and I thought we were going to meet her there, and we still don't.
Not yet.
And well, it's really I just freaking love it. But
Yeah, she demonstrates it. She summons Valifor. And like, this is another thing that for all the rest of the people is normal. Like, yay, so this is what summoners do.
and we're
but
just-
Titus is like, a fetching monster just got summoned. Like, it was really scary.
he has never seen anything like that in
No.
his life. In his life.
Yeah.
In fact, based on the way Xanarkand looks, the way they present it early in the game, it doesn't look like he's ever seen an animal before. Like there
Yeah,
is no
possibly.
nature. There
Yeah.
is no nature in Xanarkand.
Yeah.
It's like, has he even seen a bird? Like he hasn't seen hardly anything.
Yeah.
And here he sees the
Well,
biggest monster.
On the ship again a little later,
Yeah.
he sees the chocobos as the engine of the ship. And he's like, what is a
That
chocobo? He doesn't
scene
seem
is
to know what a chocobo is.
He's like mad about it.
Yeah.
He's like upset, and they're just like, chill, we just use chocobo power, it's not a big deal. And he's just like, but what are you doing? What is this?
Yeah,
He's like freaking out.
he doesn't know a lot of things related to nature and animals and things like that. So,
and part of the reason you would use more of like the fool's journey as opposed to the typical hero's journey is to introduce players like us to a brand new world that we don't know.
Yes.
Like if FF10 is your first game, you don't know what a chocobo is.
Yes.
So your reaction is the same as his.
Yes.
And I'm glad he's there. He can be stupid for me, so I don't have to feel stupid.
Yes.
But I don't know what that is either,
Yes.
right? And so there's a reason why they would use a fool's journey to introduce someone to a new world.
This is the major difference between Final Fantasy 13 and this game. Your point of view character is a fish out of water who doesn't know anything, just like us. So he's the avatar for the player. And so when he asks these questions, it's like okay because he doesn't know it.
Yeah.
And so that's how you get out of the as you know dialogue.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is having a person who doesn't know.
There you go. Now you don't have
In
that.
Final Fantasy 13, they're trying to introduce this really complex world like this, but
Yeah.
everybody in the cast
They already know.
should already know it because they grew up in this world. So it's like there's no point of view character who can ask those obvious questions to help orient the audience. So it's tough, but like the easiest way is to just have a fish out of water character who doesn't know things.
Yeah.
So that you can ask those obvious questions. But anyway, later that night,
Yes, this is important.
the Blitzball
In the
team-
daytime, he was not able to meet her, but at night,
Oh yeah, you were talking about the symbol, the sun and moon, where it's symbolized on those statues.
now I don't want to say what their names are. Is it okay? Is that a big deal if I say who those statues are?
I don't even know who they are. So
Oh, okay. Should I?
I was just going to bring up Tita and Yuna.
Okay. Yes.
Like
well, that is the idea.
The words
Yes.
symbolizing being a broader symbol, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, and also, as we will find out later on, who the statues are of, it is of a similar situation of other people.
Oh, okay.
In a previous-
I think I know what you're
in a
talking
previous
about now. I think I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about. Okay. I did not realize that. I just don't look at these things that closely. So.
I didn't either until recently. And honestly, it's only because of this podcast where I'm like, all right, dude, I gotta
really
analyze
closely
this
look
game
at it.
and see what's going on here, you know?
So the Blitzball team is together. And Wakka's telling them that the new goal is not to do our best. That's the part
Yes.
I missed about their earlier conversation.
Ah, yeah.
Where he's like, as long as we do our best, like I'll be happy with that. And Titus is like, no, like you play to win the game.
You play to win the game, yeah. This is part of where I'm thinking, like Titus has got his what would you call it? The Xanarkand culture, you know, of like you win. Who cares about anything else? You just win, and that's why you play the game is to win. And he's approaching this group of people who treat it as a religion.
Yeah.
And he's like, dude, you gotta win, man. And they're just like, no, I'm just participating in my religious, like, part of the religious tradition of my. And he's like, no, dude, you gotta beat those guys. You gotta beat them so bad. But it turns out we do see some other Blitzball players later,
Growers,
and they're pretty set on winning too. So it's mostly just Wakka. He's just too easygoing, man. He's too chill about everything.
And so this is where he's introducing them to the fact that their new goal is victory, right?
Victory. And they all say it.
Victory! Victory!
I love how they use the same animation for the
And this is
ball
when
players.
Titus kind of slips away to go and meet Yuna for the first time. And all the people around her, get away from the summoner! Like, don't talk to her,
because
you
they
freaking
know
heathen!
word must travel quickly, but they know that we freaking ran into their holy place, right? And that's not cool.
Not only is that against the teachings for him to have done that, so it makes him hedonistic or
or a heathen.
heathen.
Both, yeah.
Yes. Anyways, it puts that status on him. But having done that actually has consequences for her.
Yes.
Which is what they bring up in the next
They bring
temple,
it up later,
where it's like,
dude, you gotta stop doing that.
This is why, like, Donna like pushes him in there because she's trying to get Yuna excommunicated.
Yes, yeah.
And so she is in danger of being excommunicated if someone like him enters while she's in there.
I think the reason it worked out this time is because she didn't know who we were and we didn't know who she was. Like, there was no connection.
Right.
Like,
he didn't realize that was going to happen.
Whereas later on, we
consequences
kind of
for
we were with her posse, you know, and so
Right.
that became more of an issue, I think.
Anyways, this is why these people are upset that he's
Yes,
approaching
they're
them.
very upset.
But he doesn't anyways.
We could ruin it for the summoner.
He doesn't care.
Yeah, he doesn't.
So he's talking to her. It's a nice first interaction. But what I
It's
really
cool.
liked
She's
about
very
this,
open. She's so like easygoing, and she seems
Yeah.
to like us like right away. In fact, she seems to like everybody right away.
Yes.
She's got that personality.
But what I liked here is that this is the first person since he's been here that not only like is not taken aback by the mention of Xanarkand. She like already suspects it and believes him about it.
Yes, that's right.
And it's just like, whoa.
That's right.
And that's how she like leaves the conversation.
And she had heard through the grapevine also that Titus had said he played for the Xanarkand Apes.
Yeah.
Or something
and
like
she's
that.
like totally on board with that.
Yeah.
So it like
she's
leaves
like, I believe you.
a cliffhanger for this sort of like developing new relationship. That like, ooh, there's a mystery there. Like there's something about her where she is okay with this idea of Xanarkand, but she's a high summoner. Like a person of this culture who
she's very religious.
should be reacting like someone like Wakka, or you're going to upset people if you talk about Xanarkand.
Oh yeah.
But she reveals why the next day when they're on the ship.
Yeah.
But we may not get there today.
No. The conversation's great. It's so short. But basically, like, we don't know what to say. It's just like, hey, what's up? Yeah, I'm the Xanarkand dude, whatever. Sorry about earlier. Anyways, that was a cool summon you did. And that's where Yuna immediately breaks her, like, just her polite character. He's just like, that was really cool. And she was just like, really? You thought so? I did a good job, didn't I? And she becomes, like, you see her this whole time. And I suppose other than that moment where she's like, I did it, you guys, like that, it seems a little childish, but she seems very mature. At least that she's holding herself to the expectation of being mature, but that she has these little moments where she kind of breaks down and shows that she's 17 years old.
Yes,
right? She is a kid, and she is just, she's still got like a personality there. She's not just a stoic, mature woman.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah, I thought it was great. That was a fun.
So it's a nice first interaction, and there's a promise that we'll talk more tomorrow on the ship, on the journey, whatever.
Yeah.
So Titus goes to sleep, and this time it's definitely a dream, not a memory. And it's actually really, really good. I feel like it was really effective at giving the, a very intuitively convincing feeling of what dreams are like.
Sure, yes.
It's just, just like weird, and like things just happen that don't make sense.
And it makes sense it would be here too.
Yeah.
Like he just met a girl. He kind of thinks she's cool.
Yeah.
But he also met that other girl. Yeah. And now what? And his dream is kind of like him trying to figure out how to navigate these two girls he just met that he likes because he's 17. I love it.
But it also deals with like stuff that you're afraid of, right? Like your brain sort of like practices stressful,
when you're
difficult situations to sort of like work out like how are you going to react to these types of things.
That seems to be that way, yeah.
It's almost like a practice.
Yeah, yeah.
And so like, anyways, the dream is really interesting because
it's fascinating.
He's talking to Yuna, like on the docks of Besaid. And she's talking about, well, you take me to Xanarkand with you? And then Rikku comes running out, you said, you take me. And he's like jogging in place, which is just like this really weird
reaction.
But it's like presented in this weird way that's so dreamlike, where it's just he's like turned his back to her, and he's like, it's just, it introduces a strangeness to all of it.
Oh, very much so.
That feels very true to dreams. And then like...
Because until Rikku showed up, I didn't know whether this was a dream or a memory.
Yeah.
Or if there was something that had happened or was a premonition or something. Yeah. As soon as she shows up, I'm like, oh, this is a dream. And then Tita starts acting weird too, and I'm just like, okay, this is totally
really strange. And then...
dream.
All of a sudden, he hears his father, Jek's voice, saying, hey, stop dreaming. You with a woman? You can't even catch a ball. So he starts making fun of him.
Both the girls are
appear
next
behind
to
him.
Yes.
And I loved that.
Yes, I know.
That feels so dreamlike, too.
Yes,
it's like, oh, everyone's making fun of me. It like puts you in this very bad place. And then that's when he turns back into a child again.
That's right.
Like he changes from his 17-year-old form to his child form.
Yes.
And he's like crying.
And in the presence of his dad, that's how he feels. He feels like he's just a kid, and
And it's, oh, what's the matter? You gonna cry?
You cry, baby. Yeah.
Cry, cry, cry. That's the only thing you're good for. And he says it quietly, Titus does. He says, I hate you. And he's like, huh, what'd you say? And then the girls are saying, you have to speak loudly. Mm-hmm. So, I hate you, he screams out. And Jack's just like, huh? He's like confused. And then the girls are like, that's the spirit, you can do it. It gets really weird.
Yes.
And then he wakes up saying, I hate you.
Yes. I thought there was going to be a moment where it was like, oh, but there was someone in the room with us. And we're just like, I hate you. But they ended up not going that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a great dream. That was very good for how dreams are. I remember at first being like, hey, this is weird. But by the end of it, I was like, that's a pretty good representation of how dreams tend to go.
Yes.
Right? They just expose your inner fears, and you just like, the reality of the world just breaks in your dream, and it just becomes this mess,
Yeah.
I thought that was great.
Really, really well done. But I think we'll probably stop there. And then start up next week with leaving Besaid and arriving at the Kilika port. And I think I this time I feel certain we can get through the point that we've said to play up to 3 times now, which is the Kilika Temple.
Yes, I have. I got some more notes. I was really hoping to get to this today, but it's. I've got some lengthy discussion topics.
This at the pace we're going right now. This is looking like another Xenogears podcast. 20 episodes.
Well, I think it's front loaded. I think a lot of this stuff is front loaded. The game is just so meaningful, and there's just so much there, and there's so much that's well done that we just can't skip over it.
Yeah. So, anyways,
hopefully after we get through this front part, the ball will roll downhill faster. Right?
Yeah. I want to go over now what the Albed say here, to actually reveal their dialogue. If people feel like that's a spoiler, then we will have to put some time codes. So, time codes, spoiler. We're going to talk about what the Albed actually say in English. So, what they're saying, the first Albed says, "What is this?" And the second one says, "A fiend in human disguise." I thought that was weird. Can fiends
dress like
take human form? Now, we're going to talk more about fiends and the nature of fiends and like the afterlife in this game and all of that later. We're going to get like small pieces of that probably by the end of this, but I am a little confused about the idea that they believe
where would they have come to that
disguise themselves as a human
conclusion?
But again, we'll discuss that much later. Okay, the next Albed says, "Yes, it is so." And the other one, "We kill it." And then Rikku says, "Wait, what if it is human?" And they respond, "They are the same in death." Now that's the part that is going to be explored much later.
Yes.
With how afterlife works in this game, right? Mm-hmm. Then she says, "I forbid it, we bring it with us." And then she says, "Sorry," and solar plex punches him just like Delita in Final Fantasy Tactics, and he passes out. Yeah. He wakes up on their ship. They go in there and activate it. There's some spotlights that turn on, and as you swim out, I actually want to see if you picked up on this. As you swim out, the camera like pulls up as you're kind of resurfacing and reveals a big shape there.
I don't have that. I didn't put it there.
Okay. I didn't notice this either.
Yeah.
On, I don't know how many playthroughs.
I do remember watching it and being like, oh, they're showing something. And I looked at it, but I was like, I just don't know what it is.
Okay. I'm going to put this into what the Albed say here when you resurface, because they basically say it.
Oh, okay.
What the thing is that they found.
Yeah.
So there it is. Time codes for spoilers here. You get back up and the Albed say, "We found the airship." And then another one saying the records were right. And another one saying, "Now how do we drag it up?"
Okay. So it had been too long since I had played the game to recognize what
the airship actually looked like.
Yes, exactly.
Yes,
it looked like a thing. It kind of looks like a submarine or whatever. So it's like, okay. But okay, that makes sense.
This is actually the airship of this game.
For
the Albed are pulling it out of the water.
That's pretty cool.
And it's like an ancient technology that they excavate, that the Albed excavate.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you for watching and supporting the show and for your comments. There's going to be a lot of discussion for this game in the comments.
I think so.
I think they did that on purpose. Like they really wanted to leave a lot of things vague about the world building so people can talk about it. So there's going to be a lot of that going on throughout the series.
Yeah.
But anyways, we'll see you guys next week. Play up to the Kilika Temple if you haven't done that already the last 2 times I told you to do that. That's what we'll get to next time. So see you then.